Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Have you ever wondered why groups sometimes seem to get along, and other times they clash? And is there a hidden reason why boys and girls might see the world of groups a little differently? Well, this new study dives deep into that very question. Researchers have been trying to figure out why humans can be so tough on people who are different from them for a long time. They also noticed that when it comes to fighting or being discriminated against, men are often more involved, both as those who do it and those who experience it. So, what's the root of these gender differences when it comes to groups and competition? Think about our ancestors. Life was probably pretty tough. If your group was stronger, bigger, and worked together better, you had a better chance of getting what you needed, like land, food, and even mates. This idea that bigger, tougher groups do better in conflicts is seen in many animals too. From lions to dolphins to our closest relatives, chimpanzees. This suggests that over a very long time, humans might have evolved a natural tendency to value being part of a strong group. Some scientists believe that why we have certain political ideas or attitudes towards other groups might not just be because of how we were raised, but partly because of these ancient evolved tendencies to favor our own group and perhaps see it as dominant. They have a concept called social dominance orientation, or SDO. It basically measures how much you believe some groups should be on top and others on the bottom. People who score high on SDO often support things like less social welfare for others or even harsher treatment of immigrants. And interestingly, men tend to score higher on SDO than women across different cultures. This fits with the idea that for males, being part of a strong, dominant group might have always been more important for survival and passing on genes. Now, some people might think these ideas about group dominance only really show up when people become adults, maybe during their teenage years when things like competition for mates become more important. But other research shows that even toddlers can team up in conflicts, and kids all over the world play games that look a lot like practicing for group battles. This suggests that learning how to be good at group work and competition might start much earlier. Why would this be? Well, if being good at working with your group and sometimes competing with other groups helps you succeed in life, especially when it comes to getting resources and finding a mate, then practicing these skills early on could be really important. And if males historically benefited more from being good at these group dynamics, it makes sense that young boys might start showing a preference for group activities or for being part of a larger group. Scientists have found that even very young babies who can't even talk yet seem to understand that bigger groups can be more powerful. They've seen that if you show babies two groups of animated characters, they expect people to naturally want to join the bigger group, even if there is no fighting or anything happening. This suggests that the idea of a larger, stronger group being more appealing or more formidable is something we grasp very early on, even before we can speak. So this particular study wanted to see if this preference for larger groups is something that shows up early in life, if it's different between boys and girls, and if it connects to how adults think about politics and social issues. They used simple abstract shapes or characters to represent groups, so it wasn't about specific appearances, but just about numbers. First, they looked at preschoolers, kids aged 3 to 6. They showed them videos of two different sized groups of cartoon characters. Then, a character from each group would come forward, and the children were asked who they wanted to play with or be friends with. And here is what they found across all kids: about half chose the bigger group, which is pretty much random chance. But when they looked at boys and girls separately, there was a clear difference. Preschool boys were more likely to pick the character from the bigger group. Girls did not show this preference. They also did a follow-up study with just shapes instead of characters to make sure it wasn't just a preference for cute drawings. And the preference for the bigger group disappeared when those social cues were removed. This suggested it's about something more than just liking bigger things. Next, they tested babies 6 to 13 months old. These babies can't speak, but scientists can tell what they prefer by watching where they look or what they reach for. They showed the babies the same videos of different size groups. And guess what? The babies didn't show any preference at all. They chose randomly between the members of the bigger and smaller groups. Even when they carefully watched where the babies were looking, the babies didn't spend more time looking at the bigger group. This is important because even though babies might understand that other people would pick the bigger group, they don't seem to have their own personal desire to join the bigger group yet. So this preference for bigger groups seems to show up in boys around preschool age, but not in babies. The researchers then wanted to see if this early tendency carries over to adulthood and if it connects to bigger ideas about society. They tested adults using similar tasks, and they found something similar to the preschoolers and distinct from the infants. Adult men, like the preschool boys, show the preference for larger groups. Adult women, and this is a key point, showed less of this preference. But here is the really interesting part. For adults, this preference for larger groups was linked to their political views. People who preferred joining larger groups also tended to score higher on things like social dominance orientation, which we talked about earlier. They were more likely to support ideas that maintain social hierarchies, like opposing social welfare programs, or being more in favor of harsh punishment. They also found that this preference for larger groups was related to wanting their own group to be stronger than others. So, what does this all mean? The study suggests that the tendency to prefer being part of a strong, large group, especially in males, starts to emerge as early as the preschool years, right around the time kids start interacting with each other a lot on their own. This is different from babies who seem to understand the idea of group size and power, but don't yet have a personal pull towards the bigger group. It's like babies have the basic knowledge that bigger is often better in a group conflict. But it's not until they start actually navigating friendships and social groups themselves that this preference becomes personal and, for boys, more pronounced. This early emerging preference in boys, the researchers propose, might be a kind of built-in practice for later life. It could be an early step in developing the skills needed to form and manage groups, which over our evolutionary history prove beneficial, especially for males. Now, even though adults in many societies value equality, the reality is that hierarchies do exist. And this study suggests that our early, sometimes gendered, preferences for group size might play a role in how we navigate these hierarchies from childhood playdates to adult political views. It is a complex picture. While we might intellectually believe in fairness, these deeper, perhaps evolved, feelings about group strength and dominance could be subtly influencing our choices and attitudes, especially when it comes to political and social issues. It is important to remember that this study shows correlations. It shows that these preferences and attitudes are linked, but it doesn't definitively prove that preferring a larger group causes someone to have certain political views. It is also worth noting that these studies were mostly done in the US and Norway, so we need to see if these findings hold up in many more diverse cultures. But what this research does powerfully suggest is that our early experiences with groups, and perhaps our evolved biological predispositions, have a lasting impact. The way we feel about group size and formidability, especially in males, seems to be a thread that runs from our earliest childhood social interactions all the way to our adult political leanings. It's a fascinating look into the deep roots of intergroup relations and how they might be shaped by our gender and our very first steps into the social world. What are your thoughts on this? Do you see these patterns in your own life or in the world around you? Let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed breaking down this fascinating research with us today, please give this video a like and subscribe for more insights from RUBIN'S Mind Lab. We'll see you next time.